Think about when you're building an API that real users are going to hit through some kind of dashboard, but then you've got other services that are going to be hitting those same endpoints programmatically. The dashboard's going to authenticate users using JWT tokens that they're getting from some kind of authentication service like Auth0, and the services are going to use API keys. You're still going to want one root and one handler, but you need to support two different credential types. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how you can do that with Zuplo using only built-in policies and a tiny little bit of custom code as an enforcement check. Let's get into it. So here we are inside of Zuplo. This is a project that I have set up to demonstrate this, and it's got one root in it, which is called Who Am I, and it exists at /me. And if I go over to test that particular root, you can see that it's currently set up to work with the authorization type bearer, and we are using a JWT token in this case, this really long string. So if I go ahead and send the request, you can see that it authenticates, and what that /me root does is basically echo back the content of whatever is inside of that JWT token. Now, this root also works with API keys. So if I go and get one of those from services and copy the key that I set up previously, head back to code to roots and /me, I can test the root once again, but this time I'm going to replace this JWT token with the API key, and we run that, and we can see that it again authenticates, and we get the output, and this time of the metadata that's contained within that key on the Zuplo API key management system. So there's a little bit of additional metadata here for the auth method, and also a plan for instance, if that's what the user had set, that they were on the pro plan, this is what they see. So how do we actually set this up? It's done using a composite policy. So what I'm going to do is quickly reset this, and we'll go through building that out from scratch. Okay, so with the project reset, what we need to do first is get some policies in place, and we'll do that in this case from the policies.json file over here. And if we go and create an inbound policy, we'll add the ones that we need. So we're going to need our API key authentication policy, we'll create that, and we're going to need our JWT JWT policy and add that. Okay, so what we need to do is a little bit of configuration for both of these, and the best way to explain it is going to be to chain them up first. So the next thing I'm going to do is add the composite policy that's going to group all of these together. And composite policies, they just group policies and run them in order. So what we can do here is add the names of these. So API key inbound is the first one. And then the second one, open ID, JWT, auth, inbound. These are just the names, the default names of the policies. So we have that set up here. Okay, we've got a composite policy that's grouping these two policies together. And what we need to do here is basically ensure that when we get a key coming through the system, that one doesn't block the other. So first of all, in the API key inbound, what this will do is look for the API key that matches the pattern that Zuplo uses, which starts with ZPKA underscore. And what we can do here is basically work with this allow unauthenticated requests in the options. Right now it's set to false. So if this gets anything other than an API key that matches the Zuplo pattern, it's going to say, nope, you are not authenticated, that is it, which means that it will never go beyond this particular step. And we don't want that because we're using two different types of key in this case. So what we want is for an API key to be caught by this, or a JWT token to not be caught by this and move through this policy onto the next one. And the way that we can do that is by setting this allow unauthenticated requests to true. So this will match no problem on a Zuplo issued API key and do the authentication then. If not, it will continue to the next one, which is the OpenID JWT policy. So this one does need a little bit of additional setup. So with a click of the fingers, I will set all of this inside of here using environment variables. Okay, so there we go. I've set this up with environment variables now. These are all coming from Auth0, which is the account that I'm using with this to help with the authentication for the JWT token side of things. So you can find all of this inside of the auth0 dashboard and then add it to environment variables in Zuplo if you want, but you don't have to. You could put the variables in here directly if you want to. Okay, so there's one other element we need to add in here, and you saw it in the previous policy, which is the allow unauthenticated requests to be set to true. So save that. Okay, so we now have our composite policy that's combining these two together. Let's go and add it to root now. We'll go to existing policies, choose the composite inbound and add that here. Now composite inbound is great because you can use it to group, lots of policies together. And if you do have loads of policies on your routes already and you just want to add one to a route each time to ensure that they're definitely all being added and none of them are getting missed, composite inbound is a great approach for that as well as for this particular use case. So there's one extra element that I want to add in here before we get to testing again, and that is that right now we've got allow authenticated requests set to true, meaning that if something doesn't pass the API key check and it doesn't pass the JWT check, it's still going to go through, which we don't want, right? We don't want to be allowing unauthenticated requests through to the API. So there's a final kind of hardening check that can be done here as well. Well, I'm going to do this with a little custom code module right here that effectively checks for whether or not a request.user sub has been set, meaning that an API key has been verified or a JWT token key has been verified, because if this exists, then something has authenticated correctly. If that hasn't, then we are going to use HTTP problems to refer a 401 unauthorized back to the browser or whatever is making the request, which is what you would expect for any unauthenticated requests that are being made, and we don't want that. So let's go and add that to the chain. In policies, we will add a new policy, create inbound, custom code inbound. Now there are no options for this. We'll just need to set this to the module that we created, which is require-auth, and just for clarity I'm going to call it require-auth, and that's what we'll then reference in this policy. So we will add this to the final step of the chain, require-auth, save that. Okay, so now we are good to go. If we go back to the route designer and back to the /me route, click on test route, we've still got the settings from last time, which is still valid because the API key that I set up inside this project still exists. So if we go ahead and send the request, we can see that that goes all the way through. Let's check it with a JWT token now. Just jump over to auth0. This is the project. Copy that token, swap it out, and make the request, and we can see that that request also authenticates as well. Now that last module that we just added in there for require-auth takes care of situations like this where the header is in place and that's going to get checked, but there is no key that is valid. We want to still ensure that we get a 401 unauthorized, and that handles this. So two different types of authentication, same API endpoint covering a multitude of different use cases, and that's how you can set it up inside of Zuplo using the policies that are built in and a tiny little bit of additional custom code. It really doesn't take very long, as you can see, but it offers a tremendous amount of additional power to your API.